The year was 1966. The Beatles were at the absolute zenith of their global power. Four boys from Liverpool who had conquered every corner of the earth. But when they touched down at Manila International Airport, they were about to encounter a force that didn't care about gold records or radio hits. It started with a simple, exhausted no. After a grueling tour schedule, the band declined a morning invitation to the Malacañang Palace to have breakfast with the First Lady, Imelda Marcos. They wanted to sleep. But in the Philippines of the 1960s, a no to the Marcos family was not a private decision. It was a national insult. By the next morning, the state-controlled media had whipped the public into a frenzy. The Beatles' police protection vanished. Their hotel food service was cut off. As they tried to flee to the airport, they were trapped in a gauntlet of organized violence, kicked, punched, and spat upon by mobs while the builder of the nation watched from his palace. This moment was the world's first real glimpse behind the curtain. It revealed the thin line between the golden age glamour and the iron-fisted reality of a regime that demanded total submission. Today, we put history on trial. Was Ferdinand Marcos the visionary architect who dragged the Philippines into modernity? Or was he a cold-blooded butcher who built his monuments on a foundation of bone? To understand the defense's case, we have to look at the Manila skyline. When Ferdinand Marcos took office in 1965, he inherited a young democracy struggling to find its footing after centuries of colonial rule. He didn't just want to lead the Philippines, he wanted to reinvent it. He launched a new society movement, an ambitious, sweeping program of infrastructure that the country had never seen. This was the Edifice Complex. Under his watch, the cultural center of the Philippines rose from reclaimed land, a brutalist masterpiece intended to prove that Filipino culture was world-class. He built the San Juanico Bridge, a winding ribbon of steel connecting Leyte and Samar, still one of the longest in Southeast Asia. The early numbers were, on the surface, impressive. Rice production soared thanks to the Green Revolution. Hospitals specialized in heart and kidney care, the first of their kind in the region, were established. To a farmer in the province or a businessman in Makati, Marcos looked like the strongman the country had been waiting for. A brilliant lawyer and a decorated war hero who finally brought discipline to the islands. But, as the prosecution will argue, every brick laid had a hidden price tag. This golden age wasn't fueled by a booming economy. It was fueled by massive predatory international loans. In 20 years, the national debt swelled from $600 million to a staggering $26 billion. The builder was indeed building, but he was doing so by mortgaging the future of 3 generations of Filipinos. The turning point of our trial occurs on September 21st, 1972. Using a staged assassination attempt on his defense minister as a pretext, Marcos signed Proclamation 1081. In a single night, the lights of Philippine democracy were extinguished. Martial law began. This is where the butcher narrative takes hold. With the stroke of a pen, Marcos abolished the Constitution, shut down every independent newspaper, and arrested his political rivals in their beds. What followed was a decade of silence enforced by the military. The statistics from this era are not just numbers. They are a ledger of human suffering. Amnesty International and local human rights groups documented over 3,200 extrajudicial killings, known locally as salvaging. There were 35,000 documented cases of torture and 70,000 incarcerations. The butcher's methods were clinical and cruel. activists, students, and priests were taken to secret safe houses. They were subjected to the water cure, electric shocks, and psychological terror. Thousands of others, the desaparecidos, simply vanished into the night, leaving behind families who 40 years later still have no grave to visit. The discipline Marcos promised was not the order of a functioning society. It was the silence of a graveyard. While the people lived under the boot of martial law, the first family lived in a different reality entirely. This was the birth of the crony capitalism system. Marcos didn't just govern the economy, he dissected it, handing entire industries, sugar, coconuts, tobacco, to his personal friends and associates. While a third of the population lived in extreme poverty, the wealth of the Marcoses became a global punchline. This was the greatest robbery of a government ever recorded. Estimates suggest that between $5 billion and $10 billion vanished from the national treasury. When the family was finally forced to flee in 1986, the world saw the evidence. Imelda Marcos's infamous collection of over 1,200 pairs of designer shoes was just the tip of the iceberg. There were the Manhattan skyscrapers, the secret Swiss bank accounts under the names William Saunders and Jane Ryan, and the crates of gold and jewelry whisked away in the dead of night. The defense might argue that the infrastructure remains, but the prosecution asks, how much more could have been built if $10 billion hadn't been siphoned into private pockets? The builder didn't just build bridges. He built an empire for himself on the backs of the poor. The trial of Ferdinand Marcos didn't end with his death in exile in 1989. It continues today in the streets of Manila and in the digital echo chambers of the internet. In 1986, the Philippine people delivered their own verdict. In a stunning display of nonviolent resistance, known as the People Power Revolution, millions of citizens, nuns, students, and soldiers stood in front of tanks and demanded the tyrant leave. It was a rare moment where the butcher lost his edge and the builder's monuments could no longer protect him from the truth. But history is a shapeshifter. Today, a massive disinformation campaign seeks to sanitize the blood from the record. They speak only of the bridges and the discipline, ignoring the debt and the disappeared. This carefully crafted narrative of a golden age did more than just blur the past. It paved a road back to the future. In 2022, the cycle of history reached a startling destination. 36 years after being chased into exile, the Marcos name returned to the Malacañang Palace. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. secured a landslide victory, successfully inheriting his father's mantle, and proving that in the age of the internet, a family's legacy can be rebuilt as effectively as a bridge or a monument. For many, his presidency is the ultimate validation of the builder myth. For others, it is the return of a ghost they thought they had laid to rest. So, what is the final judgment? Ferdinand Marcos was a man of undeniable brilliance and terrifying ambition. He was the builder who gave the Philippines a face of stone and concrete. But he was also the butcher who tore out its heart to keep his power. Today, as his son sits in the same seat of power, the Philippines remains a nation caught between the heavy shadows of its past and the uncertain promises of a resurrected legacy. To look at his legacy is to look at a beautiful cathedral built over a mass grave. You can admire the architecture, but you must not ignore the bodies in the basement. History is on trial, and the jury is you. Do we remember the man for the roads he paved, or for the lives he paved over?